Everyone, welcome to the, I believe this is what, the 12th installment of the Safety Academy. Quick reference here for the webpage. The webpage that all the information is located at is the TampaBayTrafficSafety.com webpage. That's what you're looking at here. The Safety Academy specifically, there are links over on the left side, Education, CTST, Safety Academy, Summit, and Walkwise. The Safety Academy site has information for all the upcoming webinars. This is the last of the webinars for this particular session, but in the next year we will continue with another session. This is the place to come to find information about all those upcoming webinars. This is also the location, if you scroll down to the document libraries that are here, all of the previous presentations, both the presentation and the recordings of those are posted on this webpage. On the bottom, there's a resources library that has the form for the PDH, the professional development hours for the professional engineers. On the educational tab as well, and Dennis is going to hit on this during his quick intro, is the Safety Summit. So this is the location to come to for all Safety Summit related information. If you're planning on attending the District 7 Safety Summit, there's a link here to register, and there's a calendar that it's going to be updated that shows 2015 information. This is the timetable for last year's. With that, I will turn it over to Dennis for his official Academy introduction.
All right. Good morning. My name is Dennis Falloon, and I'm a District 7 Safety Academy Coordinator, and I'm also a consultant for District 7. And I'd like to welcome you to the 12th and final safety topic for the second series for 2014. It's the road safety audits, and will be presented by Rudy Ums, a PE, and formerly retired, or he is retired from FHWA. And he's also a District 7 consultant with Tyndale, Oliver and Associates in Tampa. I'm going to give you a little intro. Like I have done all the other presentations, webinars, and if you've been here before, you kind of know what I'm going through. But if you're not, it's going to be new to you. But basically, the webinars have been set up to provide information for the local agencies to enhance their safety issues that they have in their areas. And we hope the topics have been helpful to this date. This began back in March. They run around an hour and a half at the most. We have a time frame of 10 to 12, which is 2 hours. We normally schedule them on a Wednesday. That's just the way it works out. And to register for these webinars, you would go to surveymonkey.com, and like Anthony mentioned, you can go to the TampaBayTrafficSafety.com, and you can get in there to check out the Safety Academy. And also I'll mention about the Safety Summit, which is coming up on January 13th, 2015. You can go in there and register. If you go down, page down a little bit, you'll see the draft agenda for that conference. Today we're going to have a presentation, say, the audits, and you can see the previous ones that were presented. And also want to mention too that you can get your PDHs. You can email it or call Larry Hagan. You can email to that address or call him. And the certificate, Anthony showed you where that was located out on the web page. And here's also the link to that. And also wanted to mention for those that are eligible for the AICP, you need to go out in the local area there for your American Institute of Certified Planners and look for these sessions, which ones have been approved, and you can get the credit for those. The third series of safety topics have been developed. We're going through a final approval phase. And once that is done, I will make sure that that's released and it's put out on the web page, so you can look for that, and also how to go about that. There'll be a link there also to register for the upcoming webinars. And I believe right now I have it set up dates. The first one will begin on January 28th, 2015. Here's my contact information. So if you have any questions or suggestions or any other comments you want to make to me, you can call me or you can send me something by email. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rudy with his presentation.
Okay, we should be up and running now. Are we? Does everybody see my screen?
Yep, looks great, Rudy.
Okay, super, super. Road safety audits is just a fun thing to do. It'll save you tons of money in the long run. Tons of money. Save you a lot of time. The important thing I think is for road safety audits, it saves you headaches. It saves you embarrassment that, oh my gosh, do that. We could have caught that earlier. So there's headaches involved, and you can eliminate those. But the ultimate goal of this is to reduce the number and severity of crashes. That's what this is all about. I really enjoy doing road safety audits because that's how I learn from the others. And it's just a great time out there, and it can result in a lot of lives being saved. And the motto here is we're driving down fatalities through sharing this knowledge. So I want to, in the next hour or so, share with you some of the things that have happened over the past number of years in road safety audits, show you some of the background on this, and then the technique and some of the shortcuts, some of the hidden secrets to doing a successful road safety audit. Here is the website, FHWA website, when I was at Federal Highway Administration. He had come back from Australia and New Zealand and says, I got a great new idea, road safety audits, and I want to implement it nationally. So he assigned it to my division, and we then started moving this out. This was back like in '96. So it's been around a while. If you were with us last year, the last presentation that I did at the end of the year was kind of a wrap-up, and this is sort of a wrap-up too. You've learned a lot of things over the past year that you can be putting into action, and we put the road safety audits at the end because you can take all the things you've learned from the previous ones and apply it to the road safety audits. So that's kind of a culmination of everything. The other thing that I talked about last year was the keys, and I hope you use some of these keys during the past year, the development of a highly successful safety program, just to do it. If you see a problem out there, make it happen. If you see a problem that's a thing that could be happening, be proactive. Don't wait for the crash. Don't follow the ambulance. Don't follow the crash, the crashes. Try to anticipate it. Begin with the end in mind. What do you want to accomplish in your program? What do you accomplish in the road safety assessment? Those are some of the things. First things first. What do you? And we'll talk about that in that. Don't try to do the stuff at the end. What are the most important things to get done? Create a win-win situation, and that's what a road safety audit does. It creates a win-win situation for everyone, and to looking for the good and praising it, not just necessarily what's bad about it, but look for good also, and seek to understand. That is probably the key thing of a road safety audit, is to seek understanding of the roadway, of the people around there, of the businesses, of the folks at the owners of the roadway, the people, the road users, to find out what they believe the roadway is doing. You get great insight by doing that. Really can change the whole complexion of get the local officials out there, elected officials, and then create the synergy, the teamwork, and we'll talk about that. Everybody working together, just like in triage, when there's an accident or a crash or something, and you go in, you get the best experts in there to say, this person has to go to to heart. This person has to go to the orthopedist. Where the people need to go, the trauma centers and all that stuff. That's what we're trying to do here to get that synergy. Build on the past and to stay current. Building on the past of the things that you've learned that others have learned. Try not to recreate the wheel. One of the things I've been involved in highway safety now for over 45 years, and I see the constant reinventing the wheel over and over and over again. And just to look at some of the past research and talk to some of the people who have been around and to say, hey, what do you feel on this? How did this go before? And then to be passionate about what you do. That's the most important thing. As long as you have that passion, you can go forward. Once you lose the passion, then it gets a little more challenging. Let's do a survey. How many folks are at your location? Is it just you? Do you have a whole group there? Let's open up the polls.
The poll is open. We'll give folks a few minutes. Just make sure everybody's awake. We got an interactive presentation.
That's right. And if you have questions along the way, just type them into the pod there, and then Anthony will just break in and ask that question to me, or I may even ask it out to you. So let me know.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here and see the responses. You're able to see that, Rudy?
I do not.
You do not. All right. Well, it's 73% of the respondents are in the room by themselves. 19% 2 to 5, 5% have 6 to 10 people, and 3% have more than 10. So there's a handful of folks that are in a big conference room. That's great.
And that's great. And those that are in a big conference room, start thinking about how you can do a road safety audit. Look around the room. Who could be on your team? What could you do in order to have what? And just do a trial one. Take a location and say, hey, let's just spend an hour, go out and look at some stuff, and we'll talk about it, and get that synergy going. And remember, to me, the most important person on the team that's often left out is enforcement. And as you all probably know, Craig Allred is he's handling it for Federal Highway Administration, and he's a former lieutenant with the Utah State Police. And I hired him back in Washington because I wanted enforcement on my staff, not just engineers, but enforcement. And we had media people on my staff and legal, so a lot of different disciplines in the safety office. So get together with your enforcement and work together. They have great insight, and that's what you want to be able to do, is to get with them. Okay, let's move on. I'd sure love to move on. Anthony, do you have a clue on why I can't move on?
I do not. There's a little arrow. Does that not do it?
There we go. Different approach here. And here's your workshops. We talked about that, all the different things, Highway Safety Improvement Program, and the signing and marking and all the traffic control. All these things here will culminate into a road safety audit or a road safety assessment. So, and if you missed some of these, go back and get them. They are just super filled with great information. And here we have in the beginning some of the things. Some of you weren't around in 1962 or knew what was going on then, and I wanted to give you a little background on that. I was going through high school through the 62 through 65, and that was a very deadly time for teenagers, especially. Crashes were just going out of sight, and there was a lot of involvement at the national level as to what was happening, and Congress got involved in it, and you can see the numbers starting to creep up. By 1966, the 1966 Highway Safety Act is where it all started. You can imagine what was happening there with a smaller population, smaller number of people driving. When it reached 60,000, 50,000 people dying on Americans' highways, it was national news every night. The fatality number the rate was 5.5 deaths per 100 million vehicle miles of travel. Today it's about 1. So it was 5 times as likely to get into a crash, a fatal crash in 1966. So there became a real interest in highway safety. I became very interested in it after I saw a fatality back in 1957. A local person who we knew, the man who delivered the bread locally, was hit by a train, and we were just talking about that last night with some friends about that and how dramatic it was and what the scene looked like. So there was some real, it wasn't like, oh, another fatality. It was, oh my gosh, this was becoming pretty intense. Then came along, then the 66 Highway Safety Act comes along, and then comes the Yellow Book. And this Yellow Book was in response to this high number of fatality crashes by AASHTO. And it was a highway design and operational practices related to highway safety. There was a national review. This was our guide. This is where the 30-foot stuff came from, the breakaway, and so on. Before then, there was really no breakaway devices. The signing and marking, was kind of whatever. But in 66, 67, that's when it all starts. And I want to get that in your kind of your sense for why we're doing what we're doing. We're not just necessarily going through the motions, but there's a long history on that. And 45 years from now, I would anticipate fatality numbers to be much lower, and we'll talk about that. But it can only through persistence and safety engineers going out on a limb and risking in order to make it happen. This was really the first road safety audit in the United States. It was traffic reviews for operational efficiency. And here's the outline for this. This was back in 73. And I mentioned before to some of the guys, I did my first road safety assessment or road traffic review in 1973 to get we had engineering, we had construction maintenance, design out on the project, looking at it, all, and enforcement, to talk about what was going on completed interstate projects, and that's how that sort of got started. So there's a history behind that. And the things that are applying here in this review are the same things that you do in your road safety assessments, road safety audits, and where we got a lot of the guidelines from the early days. Now, how many people do you think were killed we looked at about 54,000. How many do you think were killed in the year 2012 in the United States? And if we can do the poll.
The poll is live.
And we'll be getting into the meat of the road safety assessment, but I wanted to share with you.
We're getting a pretty good spread of answers.
Ah.
One of them is winning. We don't want to give people too much time to go into the crash facts and get the actual answer.
Well, or if they went back into my previous slide, they can get some of the answers there.
See, 72% of the folks have voted, so we'll go ahead and close this poll out. Share the results with the audience. We actually have a tie for two of the responses. 29% of the attendees believe the answer to be either 43,982 or 33,561. Those are tied for 29%. 17% of the audience believes it's 54,572, and 19% believes it's 39,000, and 7% believes it's 4,000, or the 43,000.
Okay. Okay. The answer is E, 33,000.
33,000.
And the highest ever in the United States was 54,572 in 1972. That was the highest. I had just started my career, and that's how I really got into safety, because it was an emerging, exciting issue. If we go down to B, which was, and I rounded these all off, you notice that they're 72, 82, 92, 02, and those are the years I did it by 10. So in 1982, it was 43,900. And I rounded off the number. And then in 92, it had dropped to 39,000. But then it jumped up. We saw a dip through the 90s, and then it jumped up, and then we started again. And really, it started down about 2008, when the numbers started to come down. The Strategic Highway Safety Plan, as you all know, Florida was the first one to really start the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. And working together, it's all a multidisciplinary approach. And we went from 2002 to 2012, and then we went down 10,000 people are alive annually as a result of the excellent work done by the safety community. The cars, the enforcement, all the engineers, the public service announcements, all working together, the health community working together to reduce it. 10,000, can you imagine 10,000 people are alive each year to celebrate Christmas that wouldn't have been? I mean, that to me is worth the time and effort. How many people, okay, let's look in District 7 now. And how many people were killed in District 7? This is the area that you look at every day. And to give you an idea of, I live in Wisconsin right now, and they're running about 500 fatalities a year, a little less than 500 fatalities. Their fatality rate, they dropped down about 20% from 2 years ago. So they're running about 450 for the whole state. What is District 7 doing? Can we have the poll running now?
Yes, the poll is running. We're getting a pretty good distribution, although we may end up with another tie here.
Uh-huh.
Well, one of them's pulling away. Got 60% of the folks that are voted. Give them another couple seconds. Let's show the responses for this one. The consensus from the audience by 34% is 373. 34% of the audience. 24% of the audience believes it to be 444. 20% of the audience believes it to be 355. 12% of the audience went for 394, and 10% for 388.
Okay.
This was a pretty tough one, Rudy, because all the numbers are close to each other.
I know, but District 7 is real close to one another. You're all working together. Well, these are the numbers. The actual answer for 13 is 355. And then if you drop down to B, that was the year 2012. C is 2011. D is 2009. E is 2008. So there's a been a downtrend there, and certainly 100 people, let's say 100 people from 2008 to 2013, 90 people are alive today because of your personal efforts in what's going on there. That's a ton. Keep in mind that if District 7 was a state, it would be rank about 26th in the nation. About half of the states in the nation have a higher fatality number than District 7, and about half have lower, like Montana and Massachusetts and some of the Minnesota, some of the other states, North Dakota, have a smaller number than District 7. So you have a monumental effort there to move forward. And with all of that, then, I want to say things that a number of states are doing is on their overhead boards now, changeable message signs. What they'll have is number of fatalities this year, and they have that listed. And Illinois does that, Tennessee, Wisconsin. And I did a little experiment, and I just asked people at random how many people were killed in their state this year. And a number of them, about 80%, could tell me about how many were killed. They said, oh, that's on those overhead signs all the time. So they got the sense for how many people were killed and what was happening in their state. And it's just not one fatality here and one fatality there. It starts to add up. The evolution of road safety audit. Somebody asked me today in the horse and buggy era, what did you, Rudy, do for road safety assessments? I said, well, you know, it really did start. Now, I had the 1980s. That's not correct. It's the 1880s. It goes way back into the Victorian period. In 1980, the British applied the road safety audit concept from something that was done during the Victorian period with railroads, a multidisciplinary approach with railroads. So road safety audits goes back to Queen Victoria and the engineers back then. From there, in 1990, the Scotch picked that up, and they published some stuff on road safety audits, and then the Brits in 91, and then South Africa, South Wales and Australia, and then the folks down in Australia developed the road safety audits publishing, and then in 96 is when the United States and my boss came in and says, okay, Rudy, go for it. So we developed guidelines back in 96, and it's been evolving over the time. We changed it considerably from the way it was in Australia. It was formal, but we tried to adapt it for the United States a little bit better. What's your experience? What's your experience in it? So I know about where the group is on road safety audits. Have you, let's do a poll here, have you organized and led an RSA? Have you participated in one? Are you aware of the basic concepts and not familiar at all? So that'll give me an idea of the depth that I need to go into, because this can really be a 15-minute presentation, or this can be a 2-day presentation, depending on how it's done. But we'll be done by 10:30 for sure, because I know you have other things that you need to get done, and so I hope you're thinking about what next, where you can do a road safety audit in the next month before Christmas. I know there's not much time between now and then, but if you put it off, you won't get it done.
All right,
how are we doing, Anthony?
Here are the responses. It looks like you've got your work cut out for you here, Rudy.
Okay.
32% of the participants are somewhat aware of the RSA concepts and process. 26% are not familiar with the concepts at all. 26% have participated in an RSA, and 16% have led RSA. So a pretty good diverse audience of
Excellent.
Very extensive experience.
Excellent. And I hope to provide some insight as to the people who have the expertise and have been working on it, give them some some hints and secrets of how to make a road safety audit go faster, quicker, and more fun, and also to give the basic concepts of it to those of you that are new to it and would like to learn more. And I definitely applaud you for spending this time to learn more about a road safety audit. It's a way for you to save lives at little cost and little experience. I mean, little time out in the field. So, road safety audits, we have the before on the left-hand side and the after, just some very simple things here. We went, put in a left turn lane, added signals on the top row, and on the bottom row, opened up the shoulder a little bit, put in some breakaway, some crash-worthy end treatments, and just made it a little better. And we could have even added some delineators on this. But we'll get into that. It doesn't take, the point is, it doesn't take a lot of money to make these changes. What costs money is, if you don't make the changes in the design or the construction phase, it can cost you a lot of money later on. How we do a road safety audit. And remember, there's the website that Federal Highway Administration has, or just Google road safety audits, and it'll come up with this. And there's guidelines available to this. And I'll go through these processes in more detail. But basically, we have a startup meeting, and it's very similar to if you go into a doctor. And you go to the doctor and say, "Doctor, I'm not feeling well." You have a roadway. My roadway or my design isn't feeling well, or it doesn't seem right. You have a meeting with the owner or the patient, and find out as much as you can. Ask tons and tons and tons of questions. And we'll talk about this. Ask a lot of questions. What are they thinking? What do they want at the end? Remember, plan with the end in mind. Look at that and seek to understand. This is where you're seeking to understand what the issues are. So in a startup meeting, we'll talk about that. Then you'll go on a site visit with your team, and then you do the analysis and write the report. The report is probably the hardest part of the whole thing, is who's going to write the report. Then you report out the findings to the owner, and one of the things you have to keep in mind is it's a win-win situation, so you don't want to be in a situation where you put the owner in a box. What you need to do to the owner is have an interchange instead of an intersection. Well, that's not going to happen. But if you document it, it has to be logical. It has to be within their budget. And then a response from the owner. And I will go into each of these in more detail. But I did want to give you an overview. Because what we want to do is have a startup meeting, learn, visit, analyze, report out, discuss into the win-win, and then come up with a report. You're integrating the ease. You're integrating, the team should look something like this. We have fire and rec on these things. Educators. We may have the kids on or kind of off to the side. We don't want them, civilians, out on the roadway. But we may ask them, if we do a school RSA, to interview them. What do you think? What's happening from your standpoint? Enforcement, we talk with that. Talk to local politicians. On one project, we even talked to the bridge tenders. In Florida, there's a lot of bridges, and they are observing stuff all the time. Bridge tenders are a good source of information. And you may want to go to the businesses around the area to talk with them, to developers, what's happening here, what's happening there, to get an insight of it. It doesn't take too much time, but the information you gather is priceless, just absolutely priceless. And what we're going to do is, what is an RSA? Are they worth it? Should I go through all of this? Is it really worth it? We've heard so many times, I don't want to spend effort working on it. Why is it worth it? And we'll talk about that it really is. We'll talk about why we should conduct an RSA. Again, saving time, money, and headaches. Where, who, when, we'll talk about that, how we do it, and what your role is on an RSA and what you can do to get one going. They can be very informal, but basically it's just getting more than 2 engineers out there to look at something and to get other people's view. What's an RSA? Here it is. An RSA is a formal safety examination of a roadway or a section, a corridor, an intersection, maybe it can be a 10-mile section or it can be a 1-mile section, whatever you kind of work out. What's your patient? What is a patient that you have? Your roadway is your patient. What do you want to do to improve it? And it's independent. It's people who don't have necessarily a dog in the fight, that they don't have an axe to grind and they're just, you know, all the cliches, but they are independent, multidisciplinary, different viewpoints. This is a scene from, we did one in Las Vegas, Nevada, and here we have the team out there all in their best. One of the engineers was hurt in a car crash while on the job and is now a paraplegic. So he was in a wheelchair and gave us great insight as to what the view was when, from his viewpoint. That is a critical thing. Sometimes we'll take a wheelchair out there. Okay, you're in a wheelchair, let's figure it out. Or you're blindfold somebody and let them try and get across the intersection, but be careful with that also. But just to give people an insight, you can talk to folks in the blind community or in the other handicapped community to find out what their viewpoints are for this roadway. Very, very important to do is to get input from all your users. That's the essence of a road safety assessment, is that it's impartial, but it's looking at it from a multidisciplinary aspect of engineering, enforcement, education, and so on, for all road users, not just the vehicles, but pedestrians, handicapped pedestrians, trucks, bicycles, motorcycles, schools. You're looking at all the users and getting their input. Here's the guidelines for this. They did a wonderful job on pulling this all together. It's the how-to on road safety audits, the guidelines, and some background on that, and it has the prompt lists in there. And we call them prompt lists because in this here, it's just, you don't have to check off, oh, are the signs and markings okay? No. What you're doing is you're prompting yourself, are the signs and markings going to be effective for all my roadway users? Sort of the question you're asking yourself. And so these are all, there are prompt lists in there. Here's the one, there's one for pedestrians. There's this general one guidelines, and then now there's one for pedestrian road safety audits and guidelines, specifically aimed at pedestrians. There's also one for bicycles, and there's also one for work zones. The work zone one was actually piloted, and with folks from District 7 went out there, and a number of the people, and Peter Sue was gracious enough to provide staff and support to the Federal Highway Administration to make this all happen, and we did, and this was a result of that effort. So there's, if you're doing a road safety assessment on your work zone, geez, our work zones aren't working just the way we want them to, or we want to make them better. What can we do? You can use a road safety assessment, use these guidelines, and they are very, very effective. Like I said, there's one on bicycles. So there's basically a prompt list, guidelines for everything, but it's basically the same process. We also have developed one for school sites. So there's a road safety audit prompt list for school sites. So there's a number of things that you can work on. So a road safety audit considers all road users. Bicyclists, cars, pedestrians, motorcycles, trucks, all have a different viewpoint, all have different lines of sight. We have to keep that in mind, and goals and where they're going and so on, and their mission. Some people are out just for recreational walks, and others are there for actually getting someplace, getting to work. So different mindsets are going on at that time. And a roadway can change characteristics. One of the things we did when we did Tennessee Street up in Tallahassee, we found that the Tennessee Street near the university changed characteristics during the day. So we had to be out there almost at every time of the day, virtually 24 hours over several days, because it was so intense. It's a commuter route in the morning. Then it changes to more business type. People are delivering stuff and dropping off stuff. Kids are going back and forth to school. Then there's a lunch group. Then there's an afternoon delivery and kids going back and forth. Then there's the rush to go home and in the evening rush, and then it takes on the nightlife characteristics of the university and the bars and so on. So it changed the whole characteristics, and what we had to do was to examine that and see how it related throughout the day and what was happening. So we had to interview a lot of different people. That was a major one. You have to look at the interaction of the project elements and operations. How are they all fitting together? They all may meet standards, but how do they fit together? You know, that's the old thing that, you know, either a camel, you know, who designed a camel or who designed an elephant, different parts get together, but do they function well? When you put all of these parts together, does it function well? And that's the important thing, is how it interrelates, and then to be proactive in considering mitigations. Always unanticipated consequences. I did this, but it created this problem. So have somebody there, one of your people has to be a naysayer, has to be the devil's advocate saying, yeah, but if we did this, what will happen? So those are the sorts of things you'll always have to be asking yourself. As I mentioned, it's not just a simple checklist or an adherence to guidelines. Does it meet the AASHTO standards? Check. That's not a road safety audit. A road safety audit, it gives us opportunities. We anticipate that all of our designs meet AASHTO standards, meet state standards. We believe that's a bottom line, that they all will meet standard, that they all meet standards. But it's how these standards fit together. It's an opportunity to save money, save time, increase safety, and then reduce your headaches. If you can make a change in the set of plans before the concrete sets, it's a lot easier to erase it than it is to tear up the concrete. Or you put the utility pole in the wrong space, or you put the sign in the wrong space. Yes, it was according to the MUTCD, but does it work? Does it make sense? Is it operational? Does it work? So we go with the underlying that everything meets AASHTO standards, but how can we enhance it through the road safety assessment? A typical road safety review is reactive. Oh, there's a crash. We go out there and look at it. 2 engineers go out there, look at it. This is the problem. Does it meet compliance? Yes or no? That's a typical road safety review. The difference with a road safety audit is that it's proactive, that you go out there, maybe you do a systemic approach to it, looking at the whole roadway. Are all my guardrails up to standards? Are they working properly? They may meet standards, but do I have them in the right location? It's an independent team. It's a team that has no real background on it, no axe to grind, no dog in the fight. All they want to do is the best they can based on working together. And again, this team is multidisciplinary. You do a field review, you do a plans review to look at it, to see how we can make some changes. You use comprehensive approach, looking at all the disciplines and human factors. Does it work for the human being? Yes, it meets AASHTO standards, but does it meet the needs of the driver? Does it meet the needs of the pedestrian? Does it meet the needs of the bicyclist? That is the key thing to be asking yourself. Does it meet the needs? I'm planning with the end in mind. What is the end in mind for my project? And is my project providing that end in mind? Are they worth it? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the money? Is it worth the liability? That was a big factor that we had when people came up and said, gee whiz, we're going to be liable for this, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But in answer to all this, it's worth the time, it's worth the money. It can protect you from liability, and it certainly saves lives and money. An RSA can be done in a very short amount of time. It can be done, we've done some major ones in a week, in 40 hours. Sometimes it only takes a couple hours, maybe 2-3 hours out on the site to look at it, do some interviews. The prep time is the most important thing, to get all your ducks in a row, to get the questions you want to address, and they can occur with the agent viewing the plans. If you have a set of plans and you're not quite sure, or you just like to see if the plans can be enhanced, that's a time to do an RSA, to have a team go to the field, look at it, and then come back and look at the plans and see, or take the plans to the field and say, what can be done? Federal Highway Administration used to do plans and hands review. Go out there, look at it, and I'm sure you're doing it now, but on a multidisciplinary approach. You could do it during work zone. Like I said, you have the work zone RSAs during the work zone. Everything meets the MUTCD. Everything's working, but our car's going the right way. This weekend, near where I live, they changed the traffic control plan at night, which is not probably a good idea just before rush hour when the sun is going down, but they changed it just before rush hour, and we had intercity buses going the wrong way in the lanes because they were going where they used to go yesterday, and today they and clearly marked, and they were going the wrong way. People were going the wrong way all over the place, to the point where police had to go out there and start to direct traffic. So that's one of the things. Everything met the MUTCD, but it didn't meet driver expectancy, and it violated driver expectancy. Road safety audits, they can focus on low-cost improvements, and that's what I encourage, low-cost improvements. How can we tweak this thing through low-cost or no-cost improvements by just doing something different, using innovation to make it happen? You can do pre-screening of roads, and the designers to look at the roadways. What can we do differently to make this happen? And one of the things, when you look at these, as the owner, you say, what phase do I want to be looking at? I'm just looking at the phase 1 or phase 2 or phase 3. You're just looking at that phase, but you don't want to be changing stuff. If you're at the 90% or final project, you're not going to go back and change it as if it was at 15%. So you have to be consistent with where you are in the project. When you're reviewing a project and the designer or the construction personnel say, I want you to look at this, they're pre-screening it. They want you to look at this, just this portion, and that's what you want to look at. You don't go back and say, oh, you should have ripped this all out and start all over again. You got to be consistent. You got to look for that win-win situation. Legal. This was probably the hardest thing to move forward because we ran into the most pushback from the highway community in this phase here, to the point where when we did training and introduced it, we had one of the state attorneys make a presentation and talk about the legal aspects of this particular, about road safety assessment, and to talk with them about it to alleviate the fears of this. Agencies can be taken to court with or without an RSA. And one of the things that the legal folks said, and you have to check with your own legal folks and say, how can this help us in court and so on. But basically, the attorneys that we worked with said this is a good thing to be able to document what's out there and what you're doing, that you're being proactive in this process. And you have to document. So this is a good way to document that you are doing something. And the RSAs are part of the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. The state has a Strategic Highway Safety Plan, and it demonstrates a proactive approach. So if you end up in court, we have a proactive approach. We can't replace all the guardrail in our agency. We can't do all of this, but we do have a systematic approach to making it better. Why do this? Few roadway issues are identified in collision reports. You can look at the collision report and it just doesn't necessarily tell you what the issues are. The way to find out what the issues are is to talk to the investigating officers and have them explain to you what they're seeing, have what EMS is picking up. Getting with them, that can tell you a ton, and if you have the officer out there, they can tell you stuff that you'd never ever pick up, and makes a great big difference. So have that and talk to that investigating officer on the collisions and make them part of your interview process. Road design and construction operations to anticipate and accommodate driver error. Try not to have the approach of let the driver figure it out. We'll design it and let them figure it out later. Well, that really leads to some problems. So anticipate we're going to run into the yeah buts. What can we do to make the driver's task easier? And then for easier design and construction of roadway that can modify some entrenched driver behavior. Just like I mentioned about the construction zone, it had been that way for several months, and then just during rush hour at night when it got dark, changed the traffic control plan. The roadway that used to be westbound is now eastbound and can create some. So anticipate this. This is where road safety audit can come into being, and you can look at it from a different viewpoint. It's just people looking at it from a different set of eyes and asking questions. Always be asking questions. I ask tons and tons and tons of questions and take a lot of notes to pull this all together. It's like a detective. An RSA is like investigating a crime scene. You know, you see that on TV. I've never investigated a crime scene, but the investigators have that you may be working with, the police. They help you in your investigation process. But your road safety audit is competing with everything. Everything is competing with everything else. Your right of way, your time. You got to get the project out. You don't want to delay the project. So if you build in certain times when you want to have the road safety assessment during the design process, during the construction process, you build that in. What are the social economic issues that you're being faced with? What are the issues that are involved with the politics? Are new developments going in? You do a road safety assessment, you should know that within the next 2 years the roadway is going to double or triple because of new shopping centers going in or new developments going in, and what's the roadway going to look like? Those are some of the things you have to be asking. What's the future? Demonstrate the safety implications of the roadway. Getting input from decision makers, the compromise, the constraints. Tell me if when you're talking with the decision makers, people who are going to have to make these, what are they faced with? Tell me some of the constraints. We did an RSA on an interstate major interchange project, and the owner said only look at the signs and markings. That's it. We're not going to add lanes, take away lanes, and we're not going to do anything. Look at the signs and markings, and we were able to come up with some very good suggestions that when the road opened, the signs and markings really did address the needs of the driver. And there were some changes, just tweaks, moving it one way or the other, and made a big difference. And making sure things don't fall through the cracks. That can happen so often. In the rush of things, we're so familiar with the project that we forget. And here, if we have a design being looked at by another group, they can help you in this area. Like if you want to have special enforcement on a project in the future, you have to have a place for the police officers to sit with their cars in order to pull people over or whatever, and have places for people to be pulled over. So if you anticipate going to be a speeding problem there red light running problem, get and work with enforcement to see how they can alleviate that. And it'll reduce the morning after. When you get all done, you go, oh my gosh. You turn to your colleague and say, how did we ever miss this? That's the most important thing, is you don't have to say, how did we ever miss this glaring error? When can you do a road safety audit? You can do it during pre-construction at different phases. You can do it during the scoping, the planning, location, preliminary design at different stages of the design process. At 30%, 70%, 90%, at final plans, you can take a look at that. It was one of the things that I used to like to do, is to look at it have somebody else look at it at final plans. What did I miss? Find something that I missed on this project, and you have a team come in and look at that, and they can do it in a very short order. You can during after you can look at the maintenance of traffic plan at the beginning. Does it fit? Is it going to work? Human factors, positive guidance, is this all fitting together? Go through your prompt list. Before you open it up, before this is opened up, drive through it. Is there something glaring that we're going to have a problem with? And then finally, during the construction, we can have road safety assessments during the construction, and we've done a number of those and been very helpful in identifying some things, because the project engineers have tons and tons of things to worry about. And here you can have somebody just concentrate on that and go back to the project manager and say, here's some things that you may want to take into consideration, and then they can make that adjustments. And where road safety assessments are used most often, but not necessarily the only place to use it. Like I said, at pre-construction, I think in work zone is probably the highest calling for these. Post-construction on an existing road, high crash locations, high visibility locations. If you have a high crash location that's getting media notice, this is where a road safety audit can come in. What you're doing is you're bringing in an independent, when the media comes in and they say, why aren't you doing something? You say, we're bringing an independent expert team to come and look at this to give us some ideas. That can help you tremendously, or the mayor or the councilman. What has happened, and we've done this numerous times, that gives an independent view at it and gives you more credibility in your final, it's somebody from the outside that you can lean on and really help work together as a team. Where can you do this? You can do this on, I've done them on gravel roads, primitive roads, out in the Dakotas, two-lane rural roads, interstates, interchanges, pedestrian work zone, any number of places you can use this. Wherever you have a safety issue, or you think there may be a problem, or somebody has identified a problem and they're writing about it, they're writing into you, or you just want to have a major interchange looked at to make sure that you don't get caught like, oh my gosh, what didn't we do? That you can do that. You can use them at any particular time. And the earlier you do it, the more you can make your changes, the more major issues you can address. If you're doing it in the planning feasibility stage, of course you can make some major changes on that. But once you get down to the detailed design and pre-openings, be aware of the needs and constraints of the owner, of the people who have to make these changes. Don't just go in and make unrealistic changes. Look for that win-win. We want number and fatality of crashes and not put undue pressure on anybody or any costs, but we want to get the best project we can at that particular phase. And that's a key factor here. Who's on the team? They're experts, they're independent, they're experts in their own field, multidisciplinary. You may have somebody who, public official, you may have a police officer, you may have EMS, you may have fire department, you may have an engineer, you may have a business, you may have a bicycle advocate, you may have somebody from the blind community, all a number of different disciplines. You have to decide what best fits your team. The size of the team is usually about between 3 and 5. Once it gets beyond 5, 6, 7, 8, it becomes a really large. 5 is a nice number. Operations, design, roadway environment, roadway safety. You can supplement with all these other skills, and that's one of the things you sit down with the owner and your team and say, who do we need to have on this? Do we need incident management there? Are they responding? Who do we need? The people from Tim, do we need people from there to help us on this, on maintenance? You know, maintenance can create, I'd love to talk to the maintenance people because they can give me a real insight on this. And you can have people from your local staff, other agencies, consultants, but it has to be combined. Here's a 3-person team. You can have more or less. We've had some that can get up to 15, 20. That is very hard to do. So you have to have it between 3 and 5 is really ideal. Startup. You have your startup meeting. We saw about this, and we'll go through each of these now. The startup meeting, we have the introductions, we exchange information, we ask tons and tons and tons of questions of the owner. We talk about the process. We talk about what we're going to do, who we're going to contact. We talk about who needs to be on the team, who we need to contact, who we need to interview. We talk about the schedule, when we're going to start, when we're going to have the report to you, so everybody knows when things are going to happen. They have that all laid out. Tremendous exchange of information at this time. Look at the plans. Identify what other things do I need on the plans. Startup meeting, look at the crashes. Look at the crash history, the volumes, all the different things that you can possibly think of. How this all fits together, the environmental impact statement, the design report. Do the plans meet the design report? I've noticed that sometimes they don't. What's the design criteria? How are you doing your construction? Exchanging as much information, but the main thing is ask questions of the owner. And then go out there and do your field reviews and observe the volume of the vehicles and the pedestrians, the construction operations, the land use. Critical thing, what's the land use today, what's it going to be tomorrow? Transfer points, where are the buses going? Where are they stopping? What's the how far do pedestrians have to walk from one bus stop to the other, or from the bus stop to the stores and businesses? And finally, you review the crash reports and then talk to the investigating officers. A key factor here. Walk and drive the site during different conditions, day, night. Wet, dry if you can. Snow, if there's snow out there, for those of you in the northern part of the state and the country. But you have to be doing this at night. You have to look at these things at night. It changes the whole characteristics of the roadway. So you observe it during peak, on-peak, day-night conditions. And that's where you have some downtime between the time of night and day. So you may want to combine some of these projects so you're looking at a number of them at the same time. But you have to look at them at different conditions because it changes from day to night. Use a prompt list like I talked about. They remind the team what to look for to help ensure that nothing is missed. It's so easy. That's why pilots have checklists. They go through the switches and all those things. We have our prompt list to make sure we didn't miss anything. We analyze the data in a workshop setting where the team sits down and reviews all the information, a systemic approach to it, looking at it, identifying and prioritizing the safety issues, what are the major things, what needs to be done today. A number of times we'll go out there and we'll find out that something really needs to be done today, and we let the owner know before we leave the site that maybe the signal isn't working right or something's not working right, to let the owner know immediately rather than before the report comes out. So you identify and prioritize your projects. At the preliminary findings meeting, the participants of the road safety assessment and the agency and the contractor may be there, and they discuss what the findings were, the preliminary findings, and possible solutions. There may be some solutions that after we talk to the owner, they just don't fit. So we have to do something else. And so we look for unintended consequences. What are some of the discussions? So we come out with a win-win situation. We use the results to write the report there. So really, when the owner gets a report, they know what's in the report because it's already been discussed with them. It's the formality of documenting what you came up with. And the report documents the RSA, identifies and prioritizes the issues, some of the things you can do, your suggested enhancements, not necessarily recommendations, but these are suggested enhancements to make it better. This is one of the harder parts of it, is to write the report. So if you can streamline the process and move it along so you can get the report out within a couple days of when you're all done after the final meeting, you can really move things along quite quickly. Then the agency needs to really respond to it, the report. Prepared by the local agency, a point-by-point discussion of the audit findings. Yes, we're going to do this. No, we're not going to do this because of budget constraints or whatever, but do a good job on documenting why or why not you're going to do something, and then have a process for making this happen. Just don't have an audit on the shelf and say, yeah, we're going to do this, and never get it done. To have a systematic way of making all these changes. There will be challenges that you'll be faced with, the cultural challenges and the language challenges just between disciplines. People are in silos. People are going to protect their silos. That's a big thing. I'm aware of the fact that so we want to make sure that we're all working on the same team. We're not there to criticize or condemn. We're there to help and work on this. So we have to look at that and address, be sensitive to the owners and how they got involved in this. I put this picture in here. This is where Sarah, this was Sarah's car, a friend of my son's. She was coming home working very, very late. A young gal, just got a master's, should be working late, putting in tons of hours. Evidently fell asleep or nodded off just before exit, realized she was getting her exit, and ran into this guardrail that was in the door area. The guardrail ended up going through the firewall, pushing her and the front seat out the back window, and she was killed instantly. When we went back and looked at the site, we did a disciplinary approach to it and looked at it and analyzed, found out that the guardrail had been installed backwards. So somebody hadn't gone in and put the clips in the right direction, and as a result, rather than being a collapsing barrier, it was a rigid sphere. So these are some of the things that a road safety audit can identify. So what we've looked at is the steps to start up meeting, gather all the possible information you can. When you're on your site visit, have the owner's telephone number and the police telephone number, and we're calling always. We needed more information on this or that, or what's the investigating officer, what are they saying on this? We need some more information from the owner, or there's something that needs to be changed right away. So many times, by the time we get done, problem's already been corrected. And that's me all it takes. And we do the detailed analysis in the office and go through what needs to be done and prioritize it, write the report, present the report to the owner, looking always for that win-win situation, always looking for what was the end in mind, what did the owner have, and where did we want to go. In the startup meeting, what are the criteria? What do you want me to, from station 1 to station 2, what do you want me to look at, and what do you want me to consider? Because I'll go on the outside and look at some of the other areas, but I'm going to concentrate on how it affects your project. And then the important thing is to do the response report and then to make action, to do it now, to be proactive, just to do it. So with that, you are now all experts in doing a road safety assessment, a road safety audit. They are fun. They are enjoyable. Sometimes they're a little exhausting, but we learn a lot. I've learned a lot from each individual project. So with that, any questions along the way?
We don't have any questions in the chat at the moment. We'll give it a second here to see if anybody anybody has any questions, or maybe we can unmute a handful of people if anybody has any insights or any experiences from working on roadway safety audits that you can add. It's a great forum here for the community to share some.
Or if they've had any problems or issues, you know, in conducting one, or do they anticipate any? Yeah, but this is a good idea. But what about this? I always like to hear that.
They are fun to work on. I mean, you and I have a bunch of RSAs, Rudy, and you are conference room and get a big thing of coffee and, you know, stay up till the wee hours of the night to orchestrate one of these. And, you know, it's always and maybe in your attendee thing, if you'd like to raise your hand, maybe I can unmute you if anybody would like to chat. We have a question here from Robert Wood asking if we can give the website address for the RSAs around schools again. Is that from the roadwaysafetyaudits.us, or is that somewhere
No,
else?
that's from the from Rudy's special files.
From Rudy's special file.
I can send that to them. I can.
Okay.
They're actually
Is it a prompt
part
list
of the prompt. The part of the prompt list for the District 7 has a series of prompt lists that we prepared, and one of those items in the prompt list are school sites. And I also have a separate one that I developed, so I can send that out, or we can post that.
Yeah, if you email that to me, Rudy, I'll post it in the resources.
I'll do that.
On the Safety Academy webpage, and kind of tag it to this presentation.
Right. Because what I use those for is for Safe Kids. I do a number of Safe Kids reviews, and we do this sort of presentation with a group from the school, and use that prompt list. So get that to you.
Well, a hot topic item here in Tampa. Someone is asking about wrong way driving measures. You know, if you were doing a roadway safety audit at one of these locations where drivers have been getting on the interstate the wrong way, what kinds of things would you look for, recommend?
I personally believe that road safety audits, a comprehensive road safety audit program, can go along reducing wrong way movements. Here in Milwaukee, been chatting with the county and in the state DOT. We've had a lot of wrong way movements here in Milwaukee, and they went out with a multidisciplinary team, multidisciplinary approach, and really have reduced the number to virtually nothing. They identified, one of the things they identified was that there were more wrong way movements than they could ever have imagined as a result of what they were, by the time they got talking with everybody and observing, that the number of crashes were only a small percentage of the actual wrong way movements, and then they went in and they made changes at interchanges and so on, and different things. Suicides are hard to
Mitigate
address, and
it's intoxicated drivers, so to mitigate against as well with engineering countermeasures.
they can, but if you can if you can make it so it's not so, like, put two ramps right next together, an on and off ramp right next together. That's one of the things that Wisconsin found is they had to provide better positive guidance, because they were having people that weren't drunk getting on there. They were turning around. It was the people who were intoxicated that didn't realize they were going in the wrong direction.
Right. And geometric constraints like railroad crossings along the south side of an interchange,
Right.
you know, sometimes make it difficult to separate those ramps.
Exactly, and you have to do some positive guidance, and that's where if you have the railroad company, and one of the things that's even done with railroads is a diagnostic team, and that in essence is a road safety audit team, and those have been done for many years, where you have multidisciplinary team out there, and whether or not you need gates, lights, what needs to be done, if you're going to have a no horn zone, that's a multidisciplinary team that in essence is the same as a road safety audit. It's just the road safety audit is an independent team, multidisciplinary.
You said in Milwaukee they had really good success reducing the number of wrong-way crashes. As a motorist, can you think of anything that they did that maybe isn't as good, like sort of lessons learned, do's and don'ts? I mean, I know that wasn't your program exactly, but you do drive the roads. The basic thing is separating the on and off and making it clear, especially at night, to provide that positive guidance. And the wrong way movements go back again to my early days back in the 70s. When we had a wrong way crash in the state, we would dispatch a state engineer, federal engineer, and a police officer out there on every one, and in Michigan, and we would look at that and we would see what was out there, and a lot of times it was in the cloverleaf or the park clove, where the entrance and exit ramp were right next to one another, and they weren't properly delineated. That was one of the things I mentioned, the Yellow Book way back in my first presentation. That was discussed in the Yellow Book in the following Yellow Book in 74. Like I said, all of this stuff is kind of repeating, and to separate those ramps, and then some states are angling the wrong way more at the driver. California has it lower, so they're on an angle, not just straight, and then they're lower there at the headlight. They're just a few feet off the ground, and that's one of the things with the METCD that you got to do is with the height, and that's going under consideration right now. But basically, to go out there, what Wisconsin did is go out there with a multidisciplinary team and look at the intersections. Yeah, positive guidance is one of those buzzwords that you hear a lot, and I really like it. I mean, even like on those interchanges, putting the guide stripes, directing the drivers to turn into the proper lane, even if it's a single left turn lane, not just do it for the double, like a lot of the jurisdictions do. I think that's more effective than having a sign up the ramp says wrong way. You're already going up the ramp. You want to guide them positively in the right direction, not tell them the places they can't go.
And there was actually a course. We taught a course and a concept of positive guidance back in the mid-'70s. I hate to repeat that stuff, but beautiful course. And we even had a human factors branch in Federal Highway Administration. And these guys were well thought out. Changes to signing and so on. They went out and they looked at it from a human factor standpoint. So if you can get somebody that has human factors background on this, tremendous asset. So to get human factors out there to ask them, why did you go that way? That's always enlightening. Why did you do that? Just like the people going the wrong way in the work zone this weekend. They don't think they were going the wrong way. Semis going the wrong way down the roadway. And it was just a positive guidance issue. Road safety audits is certainly a good approach to from a systematic approach to look at the wrong way movements.
Someone would like a little bit more discussion about the timing of the they've corrected issues even during construction. So if you had a big project.
Yeah. At your set of plan, we have to restage this, and staging may be a critical problem. That if you just did it in a different way, make and change. Give yourself enough time to make some significant changes at whatever level that is, and then I would say the next time is just before it goes out, the final review, to make sure that all the changes have been made, everything's in place. So those are the two before construction. I would then have another point for construction that if you can, just before it's open to traffic or just after it's open to traffic, you do a traffic control plan. You do a review of some sort to see if it's operating the way you intended it to operate. And you got to look at it both day and night. Night is far more important than the daytime. And then periodically, whenever you change your traffic control plan, go from one stage to the other. I think that the most important time is just after you make you change your traffic control plan out in the field. That would be the time that I would look at it for a road safety assessment. Not after it's been running for 3 months, but just after you made the changes.
Good segue. We're speaking about the nighttime reviews for the next question. Or I guess it's just a comment indicating that that the nighttime reviews are very important. Something that sets apart, I would say, a roadway safety audit from a conventional engineering study, where you would go out maybe only at the peak period, a couple of engineers. For a roadway safety audit, you do go out at different times. You go out during PM peak, nighttime, dusk, dawn, school let-out time, whatever happens to be in the area. If there's a busy church, you go out on Sunday and kind of watch that operation. Depends on what the crash data sort of indicates that you should go out there for. And there's a lot of things that you can find, signs that don't have the reflectivity, lights that are out, just issues with light spilling out from, different places. I mean, there's so many things that you see at night, and the nighttime reviews are absolutely invaluable. It's one of the things that makes it so you have a very long day when you do a roadway safety audit early.
And one of with a night review, one of the things that, especially in Florida, you have a lot of people that are older, and older is anybody older than I am. But as you age, you need more and more light. And as you age, a lot of people get cataracts. I had cataracts early, and everything sparkles. And if you have a lot of old people out there and they can't see at night, a lot of people take themselves off. You have that issue. But I would not take out a bunch of guys like Anthony and have them look at stuff at night, because these guys are eagle eyes. Have somebody older. And even the METCD says the person doing a night review for retroreflectivity should be over 60. We put that in there when we were younger guys. But basically, there again, that multidisciplinary, it's not just discipline, it may be age too, because you react differently to a situation. You might even want to have somebody very young looking at that. Your youngest engineer you have, or youngest technician you have in the office, take them out there and get their insight.
There's a comment about the Center for Independent Living, this CIL, the resource for speaking with folks that have different, getting their point of view for the different.
Definitely. You can get tremendous insight from, and not make the same mistakes that we all did. But if there's folks in that area, seek them out. I'm sure they'll be excited to help out.
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to get those folks on your team that they.
Yeah, it's difficult, but you maybe just talk to them.
Yeah.
Just talk to them. AARP is another. They even have training. AARP has the training for older drivers, 55 and alive type of thing, and so you can use their expertise or their experiences. What do they see? Go to places. If there's a roadway that's by independent living places, whatever, go talk to some of the people sitting around. What do you think? We're here. And just ask them questions and they will give you insight that you never even think about. It's just amazing. People always have comments.
Yeah, no, they certainly do. You can get a lot. I mean, be creative with the RSA teams. That's, Rudy showed that picture earlier in his presentation of the diverse team, and that's really the point that he's trying to drive there, is that it's not just engineers out on the road. You have your law enforcement, you have your representative from your independent living, you have get a school bus driver, talk to the nearby school, and there's all sorts of folks. Walk into the gas station, that's near the intersection, and talk to the gas station attendants, or anybody that's out there that's willing to talk to you. If you see people waiting at the bus bench, walk up to them, tell them what you're doing, and interview them as well. I mean, they sit out there every day. You're only out there for a day or two, but that's their commute, so they know the intersection. That kind of coordination is key to really finding out what's happening.
Well, is there any other questions, Anthony? This is Dennis.
There are no questions in the chat.
Okay. Is there anyone we want to unlock other than, I saw Larry Hagan. I don't know if there's anyone else.
If anybody would like to raise their hand in the,
yeah.
I can unlock you. I don't see anybody with a raised hand now. If anybody has anything to add.
I would remind everybody that's still on to, if you are in District 7 and you have an interest in attending the Safety Summit in January, please go out to the website and check out the Safety Summit area and the agenda and register. And also, if you're a professional engineer and you need the PEDH hours, then please go out on the website also and get the form and submit that to Larry Hagan for processing. And that's really all I have, Anthony and Rudy. I don't know if you guys have anything else.
One more question came into the chat here, and it says, do we have to submit an RSA report to FHWA, or can we file it?
No. You don't have to go to FHWA at all. This is between you and the RSA team. Totally separate.
That's a good question that I've never gotten that question before, but that's a good question.
It's a good one. I mean, I have had that question before, and it's a good one. No,
it sounds like a big, scary FHWA process, but it's not. I mean, it's.
Yeah, no. FHWA has enough to do. Basically, the important thing is to have it in your files and to take action.
Yeah, but document. If there's something that if there is a recommendation that comes in a report and the agency decides that they are not able to do it for whatever reason, it's just not a good idea, politically it can't be done, that there's no funds for it, as long as it's documented that, yeah, we acknowledge that, the team, the consensus came up with that recommendation, we're not going to do it for these reasons, as long as it's documented, then, you're actually protecting yourself from liability because you've actually looked at it and you were proactive about it. What you don't want to do is have an RSA report that you filed yourself and it just goes on a shelf and no one ever responds to the recommendations. So those need to be documented. The post RSA follow-up of the recommendations is it's tricky because there's a lot of people that are involved in that because things are assigned to different agencies. You'll have maintenance issues, you'll have signing issues, you'll have access management issues, whatever the case may be, and we just need someone from those departments to come together and just document why things are and are not being done.
And that's the key part of the preliminary meeting with the engineer, that everybody who's going to be involved in taking action, is involved in the process. So maintenance doesn't get at the end, oh, here's a slip, go out and fix this or whatever, and they go, where did this come from? To have everybody involved in the process. And we're looking out for the good of all, not to ding anybody. So it's important to have them involved. And yep, I'm signing off. I'll buy into that.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, when the approach that we like to take when we do our RSAs is a sort of repeatable, data-driven digital process where it's not just documenting things on paper and going on shelves. We think with a mindset of things are going into a database and they're going to be tracked and there's status updates and it's all we have this whole post RSA system in place that we feel is very important to the process. So that's our approach. There's a couple kudos there in the chat, people saying good job. So doesn't look like there's anything else coming up.
Yeah, thank you one and all, and have a great holiday and a safe holiday season.
Thank you, Rudy, very much.
We'll see everyone at the Safety Summit, and we'll see you next year when we continue doing presentations. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now, and we'll stay on the line if any other questions come up.